So our project has many implications for policy and planning in the United States. One of the most important questions about these post-industrial cities is what to do with all this vacant land and how these urban communities can experience some kind of regeneration. And so what we're hoping to do with this project is to add to those debates, to inform those debates with basic research, not only on how these properties and neighborhoods become abandoned and vacant, but also by bringing in the voice of residents themselves. That is, how do residents themselves feel about these neighborhoods? How do they perceive these neighborhoods? And what do they think needs to be done in order to make these places better neighborhoods to live in? My name is Joseph Heathcott, and I'm a professor of urban and environmental studies at the New School here in New York City. I am a comparative urbanist, which means I look at cities in many parts of the world in order to compare and contrast different characteristics of cities. I'm primarily interested in urban spatial production, and in particular, the production of inequalities through space and spatial relations. So this year at the Russell Sage Foundation, I'm working on a project. It's actually part of a larger project that investigates urban communities that have been characterized by high levels of racial discrimination, abandonment, and disinvestment over the past 50 years. And I'm looking specifically at post-industrial cities such as Detroit, St. Louis, and Philadelphia. When property markets basically fail in these cities, we're looking at the dissimulation and dissolution of architecture and the subtraction of architecture from the landscape, how vacancy is produced in these cities, and then perhaps most importantly, how the residents themselves experience this process, what their views of the neighborhoods and communities are, and how they use their own strategies to build more resilient and felicitous communities for themselves. So to get at the questions we're interested in, we've really had to dive into a lot of spatial data. So we've collected a lot of information from cities about land vacancy, using data sets that are produced by the cities themselves in order to generate geolocational maps using QGIS. In this project, we've had to use a lot of spatial data. So we've gathered a lot of information, data sets from cities about land vacancy so that we could produce maps using GIS. We've conducted 60 in-depth, semi-structured interviews with residents in these communities, as well as planners and other actors in these networks that are involved in issues of land vacancy. And so through these different methods, we've been able to really piece together a lot of the puzzle. We've also taken deep dives into the actual properties themselves. So we've been looking at archival methods. We've been using archival methods in order to trace the ownership of properties from the time they were generated in the 19th century, usually, up until the present, to trace ownership, to examine racial turnover in these communities, and to really create sort of parcel biographies or property biographies, so that we could tell a richer story about what happens to these properties as the neighborhoods around them become disinvested and abandoned. The time I've spent at the Russell Sage Foundation has been extraordinary. I would even say transformative in many ways. It's giving me the space that you really need to think and write. And that's a rare thing for academics, to have a period of time where you can do nothing but think about your project, to organize your thoughts, and to start writing, to really get things onto paper. That it's hard to sort of overestimate the importance of those things.